Hey, greetings, everybody. This is Wesley Pepper. This is the Art Lexcia podcast. This is the first recording for the year, and as you guys can see, I'm clearly on my own today. Siza had some family emergency, and the sister couldn't make it today. We did actually. This is actually our second recording for the year. We actually recorded last week, but last week was wasn't a good weekend of podcasting. Uh, yeah, I won't comment on the brothers in case he listens to this episode, and I'm not that dude. But the recording didn't go too well, and there's also sound issues and this and that. And last week, if you're based South Africa, you know we had a heat wave, which was terrible, and the rolling blackouts were that 4.5 hour plus blackouts, making scheduling a nightmare. So yeah, so actually, we haven't, as the Art Lexia, we started planning the year and started putting together episodes for the year. But it's just recording the scheduling is has been a bit of a nightmare, and that was because of the rolling blackouts. On my side, we are actually going to get a generator. It's a bit pricey. We're not gonna. I definitely won't have it this month. So I think this will be a bit of a disruption to the Art Lexia's podcast, at least for this month, maybe a bit of next month. But there is plans to. Yeah, man, the government is killing us with this shit, man, and we actually will talk about it today. Just a recap on last year, man. So we ended off for the Christmas episode. I pretty much took off after that, and I know Caesar was in the Eastern Cape, and she'll definitely be touching, or we'll definitely be talking about that in the course of the year, because she was writing and she's actually doing some really interesting work, and we're actually working on a project together. I'm sort of born out of all of that. And I'll definitely keep you up to speed with that. In fact, there's a few projects coming up this year, collaborations, including the guests here all the way from from America, from Texas in America. I always find we're just saying America. It always seems so Western, But Asar has been on the program before, and we'll introduce him again shortly. Just one more thing, remember to like, subscribe, and comment on this channel. We are on all the social media platforms, and we're getting a bit more active on Facebook. Hopefully we'll get an intern later on in this year. That's definitely the plan. Last year, towards the end of last year, things just became a bit abstract, and I personally took time off because it's been a heavy year. And then this year started with a fucking heat wave and no electricity. So it really starts. This year's really little pressure cooker already. And if you're an artist and you're listening to this, I mean, you made it for the first 22 days in the year. Congratulations. I think I'm gonna pretty much do that for the rest of the year. Is just congratulate people for surviving another week, because fucking hell, it's bad. Anyway, my brother Asar Alekebulan, he's been here before. Firstly, my brother, it is what 12 noon by your side there, correct?
Yeah, it's going on 12:30 thereabouts.
Yeah, so good
So we, I mean,
afternoon.
we have a
I
little
think.
difficulty. We, we have some difficulty trying to reconcile the time difference.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think
yeah,
it's eight
yeah.
hours,
Okay,
so
yeah.
let's stick with that.
It's 8 hours. It's far. I know there's a huge, but it's afternoon. It's early evening here by us now, and Um, so my brother, we've been chatting a lot offline, and we'll probably talk a little bit about what we want to do together as a collaborative project a bit later. But first, I mean, season greetings. It's still January. How's the soul? How's the spirit? How are you? How are you doing on the third week of the year?
Well, everything is everything, and everything is everything. What that means is everything is what it should be, I guess.
Yeah, man.
Which means it's good. But in Happy New Year to you, brother. But I have to say, if everything is everything, uh, white supremacy is on the rampage. So that's it. It is what it is, and our people continue to fight every day. So that is what it is. So it's all good, man. It's all good.
Yep, white supremacy doesn't sleep. Capitalism doesn't sleep, not for 1 second. We all know that. Yes, man, we all slaves to that. So today's episode, like we spoke of, is going to be very organic, and just touch base on like things that has been happening on your side, on my side. Yeah, you've been talking. just before recording the episode, you were saying there was like another mass shooting again that side. Now, my brother, let me just give you like a from an outsider perspective, and you can comment on that, and we can just run with it. So, I grew up on a lot of American pop culture, especially the movies, etc., and it was always pretty violent, usually pretty violent. Especially the movies where there was black people, especially in the 90s, more the gangster when that rap subculture, what's that guy? Was that filmmaker? His name, Boy, the guy that did Boys in the Hood. When he did those series of movies, they were pretty violent. They were pretty violent.
Mhm.
And down here in South Africa, I mean, we got a pretty violent society too, but there's not much. Um, um, in Cape Town, for sure, there's a lot of gang shootings there, and the media doesn't really report a lot on that, and in various like you know uh, communities throughout the country. But my man, like whenever we see something coming from the states, it always looks firstly like they have. The crimes here, the guys have normal guns. I don't know shit about guns
Mhm.
though, but they just have, and even in Cape Town, they have these man-made weapons, which is pretty deadly, but it's handmade, like
Mhm.
fucking handmade shit. Whenever we see stuff from America, it's like automatic weapons. It's like military. It's like these dudes are like, wow. So it's always like, oh my god. I mean, I remember seeing one year some white fella in Las Vegas went into a hotel with
Right.
this huge ass arsenal. How the fuck he got that from point A to point B? Broke a hole through some bulletproof thing and just started like. I mean,
Shooting
when I
dudes.
saw that, I that was unbelievable. That was unbelievable. So
Yeah.
yeah, man. What's
So
your
right. So in the Constitution, American Constitution, U.S. Constitution, there's the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms. But the language talks about maintaining a well-regulated militia. And so this was written in the 18th century, well, 1700s, yeah, 18th century.
Mm,
Militia, we have a police force, we have an army, we have, all these groups that are sworn to protect the U.S. and internationally or here in the U.S., the police force. But people still think, and the National Rifle Association, which is a large lobbying group with plenty of money, they keep the politicians in their pockets because people seem to think that automatic weapons falls into that uh, group of having arms to protect your home or something like that. So it's hard to even get automatic weapons banned. Even here in Texas, uh, you can walk around just like with the Wild Wild West in the 19th century with a gun on your hip. So you don't know, you can't even get in an argument with anybody because you don't know if they're packing. They may
yeah.
pull it out and just blow you away, that kind of thing. So it's an incredible problem here. Gun culture, culture of violence or violent mentality. I mean, and that comes from the top down. I've said for years, and other people have echoed this, or even said it before me. It's how do you when the first thing that the U.S. government does when they have an issue somewhere in the world, they send military.
Yeah.
So that trickles down to the people. Any type of conflict that you have, how do you solve it? You solve it violently, right? So then we have the whole issue of this false notion of white supremacy and white people are losing power. They have this notion that they're losing power, the
Yep.
blackening and browning of America, and they're upset and they're afraid. So what do? They go out and get guns and start shooting people. You had a young man a couple of years ago, I think it was in Minnesota somewhere, and he's walking down, he just shot somebody. Young white male, 18 years old or so, walks down the street to the army. They give him water. He's carrying an automatic rifle. He just shot somebody. So then he gets acquitted in court. You have Ahmaud Arbery. A couple of years ago, he's just out for a jog, young brother, and he is hunted by three white men. The father and
I
son
think I've
shoot
heard
him
that
in the
one.
middle of the street, and the other guy is following in a car, filming the whole thing. Well, fortunately, but rarely does this happen. Fortunately, they went to court and were convicted, and they're supposed to get life in prison. I don't know what's going to happen, but you have other cases where that doesn't happen, which most often the police are not even charged, let alone convicted of anything. So they're not even charged. They don't even go to court. That kind of thing. Another instance, I think maybe a couple of weeks ago, one of the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, her cousin was killed by the police, murdered by the police. Right? Was called to police were called to a traffic accident that he was in. He ends up dead. How does that happen on a regular basis? There's no regard for black life in this country.
Yeah.
Well, I could say, internationally, but in a culture where there's a proliferation of automatic weapons and things like that, there's no regard for black life, and you can easily end up dead.
Yeah, man, that's actually like it's scary, man. I can't believe. I mean, I can't see it in my head like walking around with these massive automatic weapons and just going to a shop somewhere. Um, like ugh, yeah, one of the things about black people is that like we all grew up in some form of culture of violence. Just this
Mhm.
morning, it's the 22nd of January, just for to timestamp this, in Eswatini, the old Swaziland, there was a human rights activist that got shot by the government. That happened this morning. My friends from, because my gallery is also based that side, and my friends from outside, I mean, it's blowing up. It's quite a story. And what sucks is how almost normal these stories are.
Right.
It's almost become part of everyday discourse, and it's always black men. Not always, of course, but
Mhm.
the overwhelming. I mean, let's look at the facts here. Like they killing black men at a huge rate. What do you think? Because I follow a bit of U.S. politics as much as I can, I guess. And like you said, there's a lot of money involved. Do you think this thing will ever? How can I say? Will the powers that be ever let go of this power? Do you think that this gun culture is with you for the next 20, 30, 40 years, basically? Do you think it's going to be with you
Well,
for a long time?
yeah, sure. Uh, Being that we just celebrated Dr. King, Martin Luther King
Mm.
Jr., Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said something. He said, lamentably, those in privileged positions rarely give up their privileges voluntarily. So I don't see that happening voluntarily. And Malcolm X even said, revolutions are bloody.
Yep.
And so to so when you ask me, do I think I can't give up hope, because that's one of the greatest weapons that we have is hope. But in addition to that hope, we have to continue to fight. What does that look like? Malcolm again said that the U.S. was in a unique position to have a bloodless revolution. It doesn't seem like the U.S. wants a bloodless revolution. I'm not uh, encouraging people to go out and start shooting people and breaking in and whatever you want to do, but I'm saying what else? What are other? And we tried peaceful. We continue to march. We continue to vote,
Marching,
and
marching
it
doesn't
becomes
work, my king.
much. They continue to murder us in the street. So what is the answer? It's a question. What do we do? What is the alternative?
Well, I have a suggestion here, and I want to give you a quick case study, just so it gives it context. And I'm dreaming here, but like every idea started with a dream. In 2017, there's a major food chain here, restaurant called Spur. So it's like a steakhouse type of joint, right? And it's pretty popular, but it's especially popular amongst Afrikaners, and they have like a kiddie. Spur is actually quite genius in the Spur, that they have like a children's thing. So a lot of parents go there with kids, and man, what happened doesn't really matter. But there was an issue. Some Afrikaner dude confronted a black lady with their children, and I don't know what bullshit, but whatever. There was conflict between Afrikaner male and a black lady, and somebody put it on their phone, and it blew up in the media, and they blamed the Afrikaner dude. I can't even remember what happened, but that's irrelevant. But what happened was, I mean, the Afrikaners in South Africa are, I know they're less than 20% of the population. I know they're a couple of million. Really, really tiny, but their spending power is massive. So what happened was, this thing happened. I think it was here in the first half of the year. Ian's edit, it was, yeah. Anyway, that doesn't matter. But it was in the first half of the year, and the Afrikaner community came back in solidarity and stood with this fella. And then what they did was they boycotted the restaurant. And within 3 or so months, now this restaurant has a serious. It's part of the African culture. It's been here for 1,000 years, and so people eat there regularly and this type of thing. It's also like they got this thing for the kids and the sport and so forth and so forth. So the restaurant is really, they broke the restaurant's back in about 3 months or so. The Afrikaner community came together and they boycotted them because whatever happened between this guy, they sided with the white dude. Um, um, and the black lady went to the media. She blew up. I don't know what conference. I don't know what happened. It doesn't even really matter. But but the restaurant broke its back. The Grootman, the head of the top, eventually had to go and apologize to this. I can't remember what is this dude, but he went to go and apologize for a bunch of other things because they were feeling it financially. I mean, that thing happened as early as 2017, and within a few months, a huge restaurant chain. I think with black people, our spending power is massive, and it's definitely something that I don't think we're really focusing. If we can focus just somehow, I don't know, man. I feel like I say maybe I'm just dreaming here. If we can just somehow try to organize and just target one brand, even if it's a small brand, and work from there. I think that's a potential solution. What's your take on that?
Sure, I think you're absolutely right. This is the this is how the bus boycotts in Montgomery, Alabama, were successful doc- uh, under Dr. King's leadership. Is
Mm,
that they attack, they stopped shopping in white stores and they stopped using the public transportation system, and that caused the problem with the money. Basically, you follow the money. How do you hurt someone? You hit them in the pocket. The problem with that today is, and Dr. Carr talks about this, who is the we when we say we want to, because many of us don't consider ourselves we. And that's
yep.
something else I wanted to touch on in terms of Pan Africanism, that we are this. I was on a podcast the other day. I was texting a friend of mine who does a podcast with a guy, and the guy refused to accept the fact that we are Africans. He said, "Oh well, our commonality is black." What does that mean? Black is a color. Dr. Clark said it tells you how you look, but it doesn't tell you who you are. So I say that to say, how do we come together as African people? Because we've been, again, Malcolm talked about it, we have been brainwashed about what Africa is. Kwashiorkor babies, famine, violence, and disease. And we don't want to be African. You see what I'm saying? Massive of our people don't even want to be African. So how do we come together as people, even in this country as black Americans, to form a coalition to, for lack of a better term, boycott or to strategically attack a corporation or something financially on the basis of finances? How do we do that? You understand what I'm saying? So that becomes you say, well, maybe you're dreaming. I'm dreaming too, because I'm that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I've been working for all of my adult life, trying to educate us in terms of who we are and why we should come together to fight this beast.
I agree with you there 100%, man. And on this platform, we actually speak and reach out. If you guys check any of our previous episodes, a lot of our guests are trying to do what we are trying to do in their capacity, using their own creativity and so on. And I just want to add on to that about black people spending power. Um, it's also we just come out of the festive season, and in South Africa, like most part of the world, we drink a lot over the over the festive season, and it's quite unbelievable. And it's quite unbelievable how much money we actually, I'm talking sort of from South African perspective, how much money we spend on brands that are all based abroad. So even in something as simple as just letting just celebrating or something, we already losing money. And man, like, we're trying as entrepreneurs to understand that buying habits, and we understanding like where we are now is on. buying habits and what's influencing the buying habits, and what we've got now is influencers or Facebook or Instagram influencers, and these Instagram people, and I would try and understand that, and adapt. My brother, how big in your part of the world, man, gun culture, and is also driven by a lot of ignorance, and that ignorance is also being fed to you somewhere. And I know, like, I've followed and I read up about QAnon a little bit, which is some other seriously crazy shit. How bad is, let me say, the youth, current, contemporary, today in 2023? What Where are most Americans getting the news from? Is it mainstream or is it social media? And Yeah, what's your take on that? Because yeah, I mean, I was gonna ask say about South Africa, but what's your take on
So
that?
from my position, and I mean they talk about the statistics that most people get their news from the internet, which social media. And I remember when Twitter, launched or whenever it was new, like in the the 20 aughts. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was like, "Oh, this is a great thing. More people, more voices, and this type of thing." And I said, "Yeah, but you have people here who are not even qualified to say anything, and then people just say anything, and then you have people who are just what do you call them, trolls? The people who
Mm.
just say inciting things. So and then we have the algorithm. You click on one thing, and then it's going to barrage you with more and more. So then you go down a rabbit hole. Just even me as a Pan Africanist, and I click on, I just want to learn something about the alt right movement or something, and I click on it, watch one video, trying to get some, do some research, get some background. Then I'm bombarded with this white supremacist
Yeah,
propaganda.
yeah,
You see what I'm saying? So when our young people, they don't have the educational foundation or the knowledge to discern between what is real and what is not. Especially when you have someone like the former president uh, says all the news is fake. And then you have other guys like Alex Jones and these people who come on who the bottom line, Tucker Carlson on Fox Television. They just do things and say things to incite people.
mm.
Completely false. But if you don't have the knowledge and the wherewithal to discern between what's true and what's not, then you fall into their hands.
And
You
that's
play
a
right
and
into their
that's
hands.
a and that's a solid point, because in South Africa it's pretty much the same thing, and I think that type of ignorance is actually kept, or rather, it's engineered, it's designed to then you. And I don't look far as our school system. Our school system is pretty, I think it's one dimensional. I think that's probably pretty accurate. I think it's very one dimensional, and they definitely don't equip. In fact, they rather pump them with more fear and and kids are more confused and have actually very little identity these days. And the social media sort of avalanche, because the device is almost like squashed against their face. And that's a and this is why I kind of want to direct the conversation, man, because like in what we're talking, I mean, we both met as fellow podcasters and content creators, um, so to speak. So we both understand the value of this space of the digital, or let me just call it the podcasting space, and to be specific. And I've been noticing, because, yeah, let me just take a step back, because we both mentioned that more and more people are getting their news source from independent, from independent media like podcasts. Even in South Africa, it's also popping off. We really, as entrepreneurs, really trying to position ourselves, to have maximum impact, and to have people like yourself, and we can talk about, be very consistent in what we're talking about and in our message. Yeah, man, what's your take, given that we're in different parts of the world, but how is podcasting becoming part of this, I would say, the modern narrative? How is it shaping people's, or is it shaping people's views, in Texas, or in America as a whole?
So that's funny you asked. Just yesterday, and I follow it's a program called In Class with Carr. I mentioned him, Dr. Greg Carr, and he was talking about how uh, people think that listening to a podcast, in the background, while you're gardening, gardening, uh, you're learning something or you are studying or something. We don't want to do the work. We don't want to sit
Yep.
down and read books or audiobooks, whatever it is, and do
Yep.
the research and that kind of thing. We want to put on a podcast,
Yep.
listen to it in the background. We're not even analyzing that. We're over here washing dishes, cooking, this type of thing. So you really think you're doing something, but you're not. Where's the work? You're just listening. And then you regurgitate that. And then someone, again, who isn't in a position to discern between what's real and false, they believe it, then they spread it, and then somebody puts it on social media, and then it catches fire, and it's complete nonsense. It's just a continuation of complete nonsense. Don't want to do the work.
Yep, they don't want to people like you're gonna add to that point, self-help books, and these how to do this. Those are bestsellers in SA. So if you wanna sell a lot of copies, just tell people how to think basically. Um, but um, yeah, I actually got a few stories on that. Crazy. As a publisher, I've been approached a few years back when I worked as a publisher. So Africans really understand that space. They really understand that there's a lot of power in telling people what to do because pastors or church ministers do the same shit. Every Sunday they tell people and they base it off this book, and the people give them money. So it's actually extortion, if you ask me. Um,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but I don't really want to go there. It's too early in the year to go fire on the church. Although we will get there. Let's
We'll get there.
we we coming for you. Uh, because these guys don't pay taxes, and that's just unbelievable. But I just want to sort of work of the thing of trying to influence this tech space. So just a just a last sort of like technical like esque question, and just a backstory on it real quick. We just come out of COVID. A lot of movement has changed, and the way people are taking information has also changed. Like you said, with like putting in a podcast and just doing the garden or doing the cooking or something like that. That's definitely happening in South Africa as well, which I think is really interesting. Um, and at the same time, I also see the how it I mean there's pros and cons to everything. Um, so there's a lot of like I read this thing of that it's easier to go viral with like a story of a cat jumping off a fucking table or something like that, or some stupid shit, or those things, because these things are designed for that to go viral. What we try to use here is very, I don't say it's niche, because there's many people, I would say there's many Pan Africans across the diaspora whose things not think similar, but who share similar ideologies, and who love music, who love jazz, love real music, who love writing, love poetry like we do, and love art, of course. Um, and do you think, how do you, because when you did Jollyville Radio, you really used fun or comedy or satire in a very, very punch way. I thought that was really sharp. Do you think there's space for a Pan Africanist to be funny, to be fun, to be, I don't want to say buffoonish, because we don't want to be a buffoon, but you have to do something to get attention. Yeah. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that any artist in who affiliates himself with an oppressed group, I'll say it that way, right, has a responsibility, and this is the old school in me. I don't know, and I really don't care what the new school thinks. This is what I think. You have a responsibility with your art to contribute to the struggle. So that means, in terms of what you're talking about, a comedian or something, look at Dave Chappelle. I don't think he calls himself a Pan Africanist. I think he may be far from it. But he uses his comedy.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
uses his comedy to shine light on what the absurdities in society, right? We can talk about, I was listening to my man Gil Scott Heron the other day. The guy's hilarious. I mean, he passed away in 2011 on my birthday of all days. But he was hilarious in his poetry and his music. shining the light. He's also known as the Godfather of rap. Shining the light on the absurdities in this society and around the world, right? So I think it is incumbent upon the artist, whatever it is, if it's painting, if it's storytelling, if it's singing, the whole civil rights era was buttressed by the music
Yeah.
coming out of wherever, even by black and white artists across the board, from black to white. It was buttressed by artists contributing their skill to the movement. So to answer your question, that's what I think. I think you have a responsibility to do that. Otherwise, what are you doing? Like you said, otherwise you're just being a buffoon, a buffoon. And
I
what does
agree with
that
you
do?
there. Well,
What does that do?
that
So
people money.
right, right. It make again we go back to the we. And this is the thing. One of the things that I wasn't planning on talking about. But we have a term here we call black excellence.
Yeah.
This black excellence. Someone does some black excellence,
Yeah.
and I always say African genius. And the difference between it's the same as being woke and being conscious. There's a difference. The black excellence is that person has done something who has achieved, has risen to some level. That person. African genius is us. It's in our veins, it's in our traditions, it's in our culture to succeed or to do excellence. But so African genius. But then you say black excellence. Again, there's that I don't want to be African, so I'm gonna say black over here.
Yeah.
But even saying
Yeah.
black excellence, you're talking about one individual that has achieved. What does it do for the rest of us? Us, right? And then when we talk about woke as opposed to conscious, black consciousness, woke that has a socio-political,
Yep.
it's about socio-politics.
Yep.
Whereas conscious or consciousness has a histocultural and social-political founding. You don't get that with woke. Okay, you
Yeah.
know to vote, but do you have any culture behind that? Again, Dr. Clark said your name should represent your land, history, and culture. So even when and it tells you where you are. He said it's a clock to tell you the time of day, where you are, and where you've been, and where you must go. If you don't have that and you're woke, then what are you really doing?
Yeah.
That is the foundation.
I don't like the concept of woke either. I think it's a form of gentrification where instead of understanding the subject of what's happening, you just point a fresh paint over it and get offended. I find woke culture deeply offending, actually, and I find it here from in South Africa. It's definitely on the up, that's for sure, and it's definitely. I would say if you look at various celebrity people and politicians, some politicians are celebrities. I don't think they actually the very same. It's they are definitely that's and we all know gentrification that doesn't work. I would actually in the year want to do a full on episode on woke culture, especially how it's integrating the art. How all of a sudden everybody has to just walk on a very thin line, can't offend anybody. I think the they are really trying to sanitize. I would say not all art, but I definitely see a bit of that coming in. And also with woke culture, most of the music and the art and the expression, culture, creative expression comes out of it. It's not really good. It's not very good, and I'm talking from across the board. This is something I am following. When I mean not very good, I find the art weak and flat, and they borrow a lot from other people's ideas and they rework it, rehash it, which is the when I was in art school. If you peeped over at somebody else's drawing and they'll catch you, they'll fail you, and now it's not just encouraged, it's part of the fabric already. You don't just peep, you take and you just put a new face on it. I think
Mm.
it's terrible, it's terrible. um, on that point, yeah, I was actually going to talk about the New Zealand Prime Minister. I think she's the epitome of of folk culture, but maybe for another episode. My brother, just take a step back on this being buffoonish. Let me just use that as a loose term to catch people's attention. In South Africa, we've got a brother who does that. There's a painter, Rasta. Well, that's his, I mean, that's just his, I guess, his internet name. Was Rasta the painter, but everyone just knows him as that. So he's a sluggish-looking fella. He's got the turban. He looks like he can be a Rasta. He's got all the, he's got everything that makes you. And Rastafarian is unfortunately in the mainstream media still seen as being slow, lazy, and not having money, and all these very negative stereotypes. So this brother definitely perpetuates that, especially the lazy factor. So he actually started his career by painting old ANC or people who died, but now every time somebody passes away, this brother paints somebody, and he just blows up on social media to such a degree where he's a very divisive figure. Where some people admire him, they admire him being brave, they admire his productivity, and they actually admire his technique. And I've seen that. I actually read that with my own eyes. I read that people actually think that he can, in some ways, and he can't. As a student of the arts, the brother's got skill, but he's not just lazy, but he's purposefully lazy. So he is now catapulted right on top of the charts. And whenever there's a national, for example, last year, in the beginning of the year, we had a hip hop musician, Ricky Rick. Um, he was a popular fella, man. He's a hip hop fella. He was a popular dude, man. And he had made music. He was very into fashion and so on and so on. And he was making good money. And the dude, he killed himself. Um, and then this fella did a painting on it. Um, and A whack ass painting, and the commentary was, how terrible is the painting. I've noticed there's a type of anti-black poking fun at black people narrative, which is, I think, is like really really under the skin, and I find it deeply concerning. From somebody who's a student of the arts, who has a platform like I do, um, and has access to networks and so forth. I really think we should speak up against stuff like this. I find, and I'm putting this Rasta character in the same vein of like what's a lot of pop stars are doing, um, since this post-pandemic, because all of a sudden, for example, this British royal couple nonsense, all of a sudden their lives and their story is, if you just look at the media, it's a tsunami of all of this, and it's affected basically every form of discourse. And I can sort of see, part of me can see why, because there's such a lot of negative shit out there, and there's such a lot of pain and black pain. So you'll just attach to any old feel good story, but those are not feel good stories. I think underlying this guy is actually making fun of black people, of black pain. He's definitely profiting off of it. There's absolutely, he's profiting off of it, and it's been it's been cheered on by the social media, or like they say, Black Twitter. He's being cheered on, and to a degree where the dude, I mean, just the other day, oh yeah, that was, I don't think I'm gonna comment on that because it's gonna drift me off topic, but um, is it's just they're making money of black pain, my brother. It's heartbreaking to sit here as a Pan Africanist, as an artist, to see how much money has been made off our pain. Have you got any take on that?
I think what's the term they call poverty porn?
Yep,
That's the term.
yep,
And this whole, and when I talked to you guys last time, and I tell everybody, I'm old school, man, and I'm not ashamed of it. And I'm not on social media. I don't do Twitter. I don't do Facebook. And people will say, well, they already have your, I don't want them having, they already have it anyway. Yeah, but I'm not going to do their job for it. They're going to have to search. I'm not going to put it on blast. And I'm not that narcissistic or egoistical, whatever the term is, to be out on social media saying, look, hey, look at me. Look, I'm going to the toilet. I'm eating salmon today. So that's not me, right? So I really don't get it. the whole idea of following people, just the term of I'm following. So no, I'm not following anybody. I'm a leader. Let's be clear. But if I'm even if I'm just leading myself, I'm a leader. I'm not gonna follow you, right? I'll follow you straight to hell. I remember Fela Kuti said there's only two people that he would follow, and that was his mother and Kwame Nkrumah. There's only two people he would follow, right? So I'm not following it. So yeah, so the social media thing, man, and the capitalism, it's like they put things in front of you and they're shiny, glittery, and everybody else is doing it. So or everybody else likes it, so I'm gonna like it. And then someone is making tons of money off of your naivete. You haven't even, let's just say, a singer. The person can't. They're aided by what is it, auto tune? They can't even
Mm.
carry a note, but
Yeah.
they put on some type of fashion. They get a sponsor, and the whole world falls in love with them, and they can't even sing. And there are artists who can sing in the past that would just sing, as they say, sing circles around this person. Quality music, will inspire you, make you feel good, make you cry, make you happy, just with the sound of their voice. But you're following this person because they were on social. I know I ranted, but did I did I even address what you said?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely crazy, man. I think that the world we're living in is yeah, man. It's just it's too full of in South Africa we say nonsense a lot. Um, but like I also see opportunity. I mean there as well, which is why I kind of brought it up. And just for the listeners, like we're gonna sort of unpack that throughout the year. In fact, um, what we are as Gallery 360 Africa, what we are. We had a brainstorming session late last year with this marketing fella, and he had some interesting things to say with regards to how we're going to use Instagram influencers, people with use social currency, and it makes sense. But the more and more I looked at all these guys, I didn't like a single one of them, and I don't want them to be associated with my brand. I just find,
Mhm.
I don't find light-skinned, bikini-clad women having drinks as anything related to what
But you
I
see,
do.
you see what you're doing. You're being intentional and you're being strategic. Now, I would be a hypocrite to say, I'm sitting here on this podcast and I worked on a podcast and we're talking about doing another podcast and say, well, I don't even podcast, social media. See, I don't even know. But the point is, any the way that I got involved with Jollyville and the reason that I've agreed to work with you because I know you're A plus cat is that it's intentional. What I contribute to, what I participate in is intentional and it's strategic. Sure, on Jollyville, like you said, some comedy, some nonsense comedy skits and things like that. But my real job at Jollyville, if you will, with the volunteers, not a job, was community beat, and that was talking about people building community and whatever they were doing around the world. That was it. So you're doing this podcast. We're talking about some things. We're talking about doing another podcast. It's intentional.
Yeah, man.
I don't want any light skinned sisters, white chicks in bikinis in my. I don't want that associated with me. That's not who I am. I mean, that's fine. They're beautiful, whatever. But I don't want to be associated with that. So I'm going to be intentional about the images that I
Very
attach
important
to
to be
myself or
said
what I'm
that.
doing.
Yeah, man. And actually, raise a point there on that podcast we want to do. So just the listeners, we want to do like a separate series where we talk to in depth to different leaders across the diaspora about contemporary issues around and how they use their art or their talent to sort of make some form of change. And we wanna do it in a very pure, in a very organic, in a very beautiful way. So definitely look forward to that. We also, Siza is also working on a separate series of work. We want to call that one Poetry Tuesday. So it'll just be her reading various poetry, and it's just an ode from ourselves, just to give another platform, and just strictly just for poetry and just reading it, not the performance element or the politics of poetry. So just like a pure and just to the listeners, so definitely look out for that. And yeah, man, we also want to do a lot more live broadcasting this year. So there's also a few guests that we've lined up with regards to that. It will be more around events, of course, and we'll be quite specific. Because just to touch base on that point, just we made earlier on, like, and you emphasizing that on being specific. We definitely upping our game. We're being very specific. We know exactly who we want to talk or sell our brand to, and we are just curating content around that. But I must say, big up to Zencaster. This app is beautiful. It's handling everything just nicely. If it was Zoom, we would have the screen would have been frozen more often. It would have made that Zoom that sound, and yeah. So at least we're learning. Yeah, my brother, we were touching. Shit, I should have wrote it down. Actually, I forgot the last point. But no, no, no. We were talking about the. Okay, I forgot. Yeah, I forgot. I should have wrote it down. It's because we just for the listeners off air. We spoke about something else, man, and I got side. I should have wrote it. I should have wrote it down. I should have wrote it down. But I know it was something to do with yeah. Anyway, but let's pick it up from what we are talking off air, and just move forward, like what we want to do with our series. We want to focus on really cool sorry, curate really good artists from across the diaspora. I'm looking forward to it very much so. It's going to be interesting meeting. I like meeting new cultures and new people, and all of that. And if we are lucky, man, not lucky. I don't like to use that. Are you in context? In context, um, these guys who's busy, these programmers who's busy working on my app, who's busy designing the app. Man, in the future, I'd like to actually employ one of them. That's definitely one of my goals for the year. And it's just to have a guy who can write code. So when we do anything, put out any video, any form of content, then we can have somebody else writing code, and so you can be pushed up on that Google search engine, and just that metadata, which I mean, what I do only really touches the surface. It's just hashtags and so forth. But there's tools you can really get really can really pump that. That's also definitely that's look forward to that happening this year. For more of that this year. My brother, so just for the listeners, do you have any, our collaborative project, do you have any ideas on where you want to take it to? Any names that you can name drop or just put out there for the
But I don't.
listeners?
Yeah, I don't want to drop names because I don't know if people are gonna, gonna come through, and then it's already out there. But I will say, there's a brother, there's a brother in Brazil, Pan Africanist, and he's doing some things down there, and I know he'll come through. Um, and there's some people that I think that would be, excited about the opportunity to be on a podcast with us and talk about Pan Africanism and art and that type of thing. But I wanted to say something to go back to a point that I made about intentionality and strategy. I was talking to, well, I live in a community that is 55 and older, right? And I chose this community because I thought it was going to be quiet. But we have like 70-year-old guys that come out every day starting at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they have their boom boxes or whatever they have. And they're playing music loud and smoking and drinking. And I'm like, so I'm having a hard time dealing with the management company of the apartments. Like, what is this every day? And so I say that to lead into this point. I was talking to a sister on the job, and she was saying how through everything's being gentrified, that the white
Yeah.
people were coming gentrifying black communities and complaining about the noise, and she thought that was absurd. And I said, well, I hear you, but listen to this, dig this. In 1968, Price M. Cobbs and William H. Greer, doctor, psychiatrist, and Dr. Greer is the father of the comedian David Allen Greer from In Living
Yeah,
Color.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
People are
yeah, yeah,
familiar with
yeah,
that
yeah.
show.
Yeah.
His father is a psychiatrist. So they wrote a book in 1968 called Black Rage. And there's a chapter in there that talks about in the black community, you have all this noise. You know, people playing music, people being loud, shouting, all outside going on, all this chaos going on. You go to the white community, you don't see that. You
Mm,
hear birds chirping,
mm,
you hear crickets or whatever.
mm.
The point is, they have time to reflect and plan. You can do that in that environment. In our environment, when can you plan and be
Yeah, you just got
strategic
time to
and be
react.
intentional?
Yeah.
So our sister, our under the total sister, I understand what you're saying, but for real, we need some quiet places. I mean, these folks can go to the park. That's what the park is for. We have amenities here. We have a pool area. We have an activity room. We have a computer room. We have a gym. Go sit outside your own window and play loud. You see what I'm saying? So, the point again is we need time to reflect and to be intentional and strategic in what we do. That's what I
I
said
agree with
today.
you. I agree with you. Black people only have time to react, and that's all they do. Their whole lives just react to things and find credit. Unfortunately, no,
Right.
I agree with you. Like, if there's one thing about Johannesburg that it taught me is to appreciate silence. I appreciate silence. Silence is some of my favorite genre of music. Sometimes, like, I just can't get enough of it. I'll just play it over and over and over. I did it last night actually. Last night I had some really fucked up news early on in the day, and I just think it's too early in the year to overreact to stuff. So, it was just quiet. I was just quiet literally the whole evening till I eventually fell asleep. So yeah, and we'll definitely explore. Uh, um, I'd like to um, in in art, man, like in sculpture, you have something called negative space, which is a space in between objects. So, like for
Mhm.
example, that's my hand. The negative space will be the space and around it, right? And in some instances, negative space is says more than the actual object. Likewise with sound. Sometimes silence, is the loudest form of um, noise, if you
Mhm.
get me. And we live in a society where everything is overreacted or being, yeah. So sometimes silence, I completely hear you on that. And yeah, black people don't. I certainly, as a black man, I certainly have very little time. I've got to make sure I have time to be quiet, otherwise it just won't happen. um, my
Mhm.
brother, I can feel the storm is actually coming. Here it's going to get pretty loud. My speaker system is not that great, and once it hits the zinc, then it becomes pretty loud. Just to tell, like it we just had a serious ass heat wave last week. It was pretty hot, and so I'm hoping that this bit of rain breaks at least more of that heat. I mean, it's always hot here, but last week was next level. It's just too much. So much that I actually, yeah, it was just too much. But in South Africa, we like complaining about the weather. So if ever you get a plane here and you want small talk about the weather. You just say, "Oh, it's hot today," and you'll probably end up there for about an hour without even like talking about just like the wind or the weather or the cold. Don't even be cold. We like complaining when it's cold. On social media especially, and it's just a South African thing. We like it. So I'm just being my true self here. My brother, it was fantastic having you on today. This is our first episode for the year. We'll definitely be having conversations in the future. And to the listeners, remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Hopefully, Caesar will be with us the next recording. We're actually talking to Boto Fella, to Dabo, man, to the older common man. We have finally nailed him down, and we have studio time, so we're going to do that recording with him. So we're going to be talking about his entire legacy, and he too is becoming a podcaster. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then also I've got a very talented brother. He's actually a buddy of mine, all the way from the Western Cape. We're going to talk about his tattoos and his tattoo arts and his visual art. That will be most probably the first week of February. And then after that, the other guests they are lined up, but we just need to reschedule them. So look, there's lots to look forward to for 2023. My brother, have a blessed Sunday. Yeah,
You
man.
too, man.
Be
Love you,
in
brother.
touch via WhatsApp. All right, man. One love, my king.